Welcome back to Strawberry Ink., the true crime podcast, where we uncover the stories behind some of the most chilling cases in recent history. Today, we delve into the tragic disappearance of 22-year-old Gabby Petito and a complicated manhunt for her fiancé, Brian Laundrie, a case that captivated the nation. It left many questions unanswered, with an ending that shocked everyone. So, let's rewind and break down the timeline of events that led to Gabby Petito's disappearance, her tragic death, and the aftermath of a search for answers. Gabby Petito was a 22-year-old from Blue Point, New York. Born on March 19, 1999, Gaby was vibrant, free-spirited, and dreamed of becoming a social media influencer. She had a passion for travel, the outdoors, and living life to the fullest. Gaby had a huge following on platforms like Instagram and YouTube, where she shared her adventures, often featuring her cross-country travels with her fiancé, Brian Laundrie. In the summer of 2021, Gaby and Brian set out on a road trip across the United States. Their goal, a van life journey to explore the beauty of the American West, showcasing pictures of natural parks, sunsets, and their seemingly perfect life. She quitted her job at Taco Bell to pursue the vlogging lifestyle full-time. But behind the Instagram-worthy photos, there were signs of trouble. Gaby's friends and family later revealed that she had been in a toxic relationship with Brian, one that had its fair share of emotional and physical abuse. Friends claimed that while Gaby appeared to be living her dream, there were moments where she looked visibly unhappy, and there were whispers of tension in her relationship with Brian. On August 12, 2021, Gaby and Brian had a run-in with the law in Moab, Utah, when the police responded to a domestic dispute call. Gaby was visibly upset and Brian appeared to be the aggressor, though both were reportedly emotional. After an investigation, the officers separated the couple for the night, but no charges were filed. Brian was placed in a hotel room that he did not have to pay for, and Gaby spent the night alone in their van. This moment would later be considered a major red flag in the case. Despite this incident, Gaby picked Brian up and continued on their journey. On August 24, 2021, she texted her mother, telling her she was leaving Wyoming to visit National Park. That was the last communication her family ever received from her. Gaby's mother, Nicole Smith, grew increasingly concerned when no new posts were made to her social media, and her phone was suddenly off. On September 1st, Brian returned home to Northport, Florida, in the couple's van without Gaby. He was alone, but refusing to explain her whereabouts. This was the first sign of something seriously wrong, but Gaby's family wasn't immediately aware of her disappearance. On September 11, 2021, Gaby's family reported her missing to the police. The search for Gaby began immediately, with a nationwide outcry for answers. The FBI, local authorities, and volunteers combed through the vast wilderness areas where Gaby had last been seen, including Grand Teton and the Yellowstone National Park. Meanwhile, Brian Laundrie remained at his parents' house in Florida, refusing to speak with authorities. His lack of cooperation raised suspicions, and the case quickly became one of the most widely covered stories in the media. While investigators worked around the clock, Another disturbing detail emerged. On September 19th, 2021, human remains were found in a remote area of Wyoming's Bridger-Teton National Forest. These remains were confiscated and taken to the Teton County Coroner's Office. Shortly after, FBI investigators confirmed the remains of Gaby through DNA matching with the corroboration of her stepfather, who had traveled there to help out with the search. The coroner's office established her cause of death as murder. After a further examination, it was confirmed that she had died from blunt force trauma and strangulation. The search for Brian Laundrie was on. Authorities began treating him as a person of interest in the case. On September 17th, 2021, Brian's parents reported him missing after he had disappeared from their home. He had allegedly gone hiking nearby with his family at a trail in the Carlton Reserve, and his whereabouts remained unknown. The case became even more bizarre as the media speculated about Brian's whereabouts and the Laundrie family's behavior. They had kept quiet and refused to cooperate with law enforcement, causing many to question why they weren't taking action to find Gaby or support her family. Meanwhile, mortuary services for Gabby Petito were held at the Maloney's Holbrook Funeral Home in Long Island, both visitation and celebration of life. On the 26th of September, she was afterwards cremated. Days turned into weeks, and the nation watched as authorities conducted a massive search for Brian, combing through swamps and reserves in Florida. The search was highly publicized, with social media users flooding the internet with theories, including the possibility that Brian had fled the country. Gaby had saved up so much money for that trip. Aside from her job at Taco Bell, she was also a nutritionist, and she worked about 50 hours a week. Another thing to keep in mind was that Brian worked at an organic juice bar, and former co-workers claimed that when he was upset, he would have outbursts, and that he had a difficult time controlling his temper. And while Brian had been missing, the FBI noticed that Brian used Gaby's Capital One debit card unlawfully and had spent about $1,000. This led to Brian being tied to a federal criminal probe in Wyoming. Stephanie Sprecher from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Wyoming opened a case and presented it to a grand jury at the only Wyoming federal court. The allegations ranged from August 30th, 2021 to September 1st, 2021. The crimes had occurred in Wyoming. This grand jury on September 20th, 2021 indicted Brian Laundrie on one count of using or trafficking in unauthorized access devices. If convicted on this charge, Brian could have faced 10 years in prison, a $250,000 fine, 3 years of supervised release, and $100 of special assessment if he chose to go to trial for this crime. The trial would have lasted about 5 days. Prosecutor Sprecher appointed Nicole Romin to prosecute from now on. She would be the new attorney taking on the case. Prosecutor Romin seek to have Brian Laundrie be detained in a Wyoming facility if he was ever captured. On January 26, 2022, discharge was dropped due to Brian's death. On October 20th, 2021, Brian's parents went to the Carlton Reserve to help out with the search. They then found remains in an area that had been flooded by rainwater. When that search started, the remains were taken to the Sarasota County Coroner's Office and confirmed as Brian. That was done through the examination of dental records. Brian's cause of death was afterwards established as a suicide by gunshot. A handgun and ammunition was discovered near his body, and his backpack had been found nearby. The backpack discovered was confirmed as Brian's, and the gun was declared to be of the Laudry family. His notebook, which was eventually released to the public, contained writings where Brian admitted responsibility for Gabby's death. He expressed remorse and explained that the couple had fought during their travels, but he didn't provide any further details about how the events unfolded that led to her death. In these notes, he confessed to strangling Gabby to death. Brian would have no funeral for the time being, but he was cremated at the Gendron Funeral Home. Months later, there would be a private reunion for his friends and family to remember him. To this day, Brian's ashes remain in his parents' house. The death of Gabby Petito, the subsequent search for Brian Laudry, and the tragic conclusion left many more with questions than answers. Gabby's family was left to mourn the loss of a daughter who had so much promise and so many dreams. Her case sparked an outpouring of grief and sympathy, but it also raised awareness about domestic violence, the dangers of toxic relationships, and the importance of speaking out when something doesn't seem right. In the wake of Gabby's death, there has been a renewed focus on the issue of domestic abuse, with advocates pushing for more resources for victims and education about healthy relationships. Gabby's legacy lives on through the Gabby Petito Foundation, which was established to help families of missing persons and victims of domestic violence. What happened to Gabby Petito and Brian Laudry is a heartbreaking reminder of how easily a relationship can turn deadly when unchecked violence and manipulation take root. Gabby was a young lady with dreams of adventure, and her tragic fate should serve as a cautionary tale about the dangers of toxic relationships. Her family later planned a trip to Wyoming, and her ashes would be scattered at the Jenny Lake. While Gabby had been missing, Brian Laudry's parents hired a lawyer, Steve Bertolino, who vowed to represent them in further legal issues. The uncooperation between the Laudry family and this lawyer brought emotional distress to the Petito family. Therefore, action was taken within the civil court system. The Petito family hired attorney Patrick Riley to represent them for further legal battles. On November 17, 2022, a wrongful death claim brought by Petito's estate against Laudry's estate resulted in an award of $3 million. The Petito estate in this lawsuit was run by Gabby Petito's mother, Nicole Smith, and Brian Laudry's estate was run by Roberta Laudry, his mother. The official making the judgment was Sarasota County Circuit Judge Hunter Carroll. The lawyer representing the Lottery estate was Steve Bertolino, and obviously the other lawyer representing the Petito estate was Patrick Riley, the family's hired lawyer. The recovery of this amount was doubtful due to Lottery's minimal assets. The recovery of this amount was doubtful due to Brian Lottery's minimal assets. Gabby Petito's parents, through their family lawyer that they had hired, as well sued Brian Lottery's parents and their attorney, Steve Bertolino, claiming the pain and emotional distress that had been caused by their actions of withholding information from them about Gabby Petito's disappearance and death. Sarasota County Circuit Judge Hunter Carroll allowed this lawsuit to move forward. This had been the same judge who allowed the wrongful death claim to move forward as well. This lawsuit never went to trial. It was settled after mediation on February 21st, 2024. The settlement occurred outside of court, and the details were not made public within the settlement in November 2022 as well. In this case, attorney Steve Bertolino had represented himself, and the Lotterys hired a new attorney, Ryan Gilbert, to represent them in this case. Also in November 2022, Gabby Petito's parents filed a $50 million wrongful death lawsuit against the Moab, Utah Police Department. They amended the complaint in 2023 to include allegations that Officer Eric Pratt admitted that he was aware Lottery was a threat but decided to ignore the law, and that the department did not abide by its own lethality assessment protocol. The Moab Police Department was represented by their attorney, Mitchell Stevens, and attorney Patrick Riley continued to represent the Petitos. However, on November 20th, 2024, Carbon County, Utah Judge Don Torgerson dismissed this lawsuit. He cited the Governmental Immunity Act of Utah, which provides sovereign immunity. However, he did acknowledge that the case met the early standard to suggest the officer's conduct could have contributed to Gabby Petito's death. The parents plan to appeal this dismissal, claiming that Governmental Immunity Act of Utah is unconstitutional. This appeal is still in progress. I wish the Petito family the best of luck in it. I would also like to mention that I am looking at a petition to remove Judge Torgerson from the Carbon County courts. The petition alleges that he does not care about victims nor survivors, and he favors powerful defendants such as this police department. I will try to put on a link on the description of this episode, and if I am unable to do so, to put on a link that you could easily press and access a petition. Just type on your Google search bar, remove Judge Don Torgerson from Carbon County Courts. Don is spelled D-O-N, Torgerson, Torgerson. That's it for today's episode of Strawberry Ink. As always, I encourage you to reflect on the story and remember the lessons we can learn from it. If you or someone you know is in a dangerous relationship, please reach out for help. Resources are available online or in most communities. Thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to follow us on social media for updates on upcoming episodes. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, stay curious, and have a good day.